delivery of healthcare in Guyana has grown significantly over the past years. There have been a decentralization of the services, and joining me today to discuss the government's program as it relates to the delivery of healthcare not only in the central areas but to all other parts of Guyana is the Honorable Barry Ramsaran, Minister of Health. Minister, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Edward.
Like I said in my preamble just now, the delivery of health services across the country has seen rapid growth. Maybe perhaps you could spend a few minutes just to outline, in a more broader sense, what's happening in the health sector.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm happy to be on Regional Roundup, and this is such an opportune invitation because I'm going to be looking at some of the regional things we're doing for health. The regional delivery of health services depends not only on the Ministry of Health, but on that strong relationship between several ministries: the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, and now we're trying to get the Ministry of Education more involved. The Guyana has a very wide network of primary health care facilities because we believe in getting health care down to the community level. We have over 400 facilities right across the country, starting at different levels, from the humble health hut or health post up to the health center, then the district hospital, the regional hospital, and of course our main referral hospital, the National Hospital in Georgetown. We have national institutions like the Psychiatric Hospital and so on, and a few private hospitals. But I'm going to be concentrating on the public sector. So you have that wide network which stretches into all the 10 administrative regions. And it consists not only of infrastructure, but we have to have the personnel. So over the past few years, there's been a massive surge in investment in the health sector infrastructure and the health sector staff. So there are two aspects that you need to discuss, and a measure of our success as a party and government, because we're now celebrating the 20th anniversary in power, and the Ministry of Health has a widespread program to mark that anniversary. A good measure is to see how we have been able to send more services to more communities in more regions and in more places. And that's what I think I'll concentrate on in this program. We have over the years, especially in the past 5 to 7 to 8 years, had a massive renovation, rejuvenation, capital overhaul of our health sector infrastructure. We have had hospitals at Diamond, never had a hospital there before, on a new piece of land, an empty piece of land. Lenora, where we had a little cottage hospital with one doctor, we now have a additional hospital beside the small cottage hospital. So when I say we've built Lenora, it is fully honest. It's not that I'm not recognizing we had a small structure there way back from the days of Janet Jagan. But we've had it a massive addition where now you have up to 20 doctors and technical people working, whereas before you had one doctor. Sometimes he was servicing other areas too. So you have Diamond, brand new hospital, only about 3 years old. Lenora, Soddy, Maikoni. And at Port Morant, we have a massive structure for the National Eye Care Center, the National Ophthalmology Hospital. I mentioned these four and grouped them together with the fifth one at Port Morant because these are have strong connections from the Cuban or the upgraded Cuba-Guyana cooperation in the area of health. But there are other hospitals that we've built over that period. Let them had a hospital, an old structure, not well prepared for modern medicine. We've built a new structure there, and at the same time its partner in Mabaruma. Notice at the bottom of the map, Amerindian area. At the top of the map, predominantly Amerindian area. New structures. And it is aimed at supporting what I said, regionalizing more and more, devolving resources so that you reach out to communities that in the past were marginalized. Amerindians were seen as people living in the jungle, in the bush. Let them, you took days and days to get to, and everybody would want to fly back to Georgetown for services. What we're doing, Edward, is carrying services there. I have theaters at Letem and Mabruna, operating theaters, which are capable of hosting the best from Georgetown. as part of the celebration, the 20th anniversary celebrations, and at the same time towards the end of Indigenous Month, Heritage Month, I dispatched a massive team of surgeons and medical people to the Lethem Hospital. It coincided with the recent visit of the president, who at that time was also celebrating the 20th anniversary of the People's Progressive Party in power in Lethem. That team consisted of Dr. Jeffrey, Fawcett Jeffrey, Dr. Shoba Gobin, Dr. Neville Gobin, Dr. Truss, and Dr. Chan, and a few others. In one plane, I'm sending some of the best brains who operate in the private sector on the coast and in the Georgetown Hospital to go where? To let them to deal with who? Amerindian people who predominantly were pushed aside in the past. And if you speak to Neville Gobin or Shoba Gobin, they will tell you, okay, conditions might not be ideal, but they're happy to see what they're seeing there. And this team, Jeffrey, Gobins, Truss, people like Mr. Amir at the hospital in Georgetown, people like Jabur, they have been joining from time to time. I'm only speaking about this now, but this has been going on for the past several years. And they would go to Mabruma, which is the twin hospital to Lethem, and they perform at Lethem 49 surgeries, which in the past would have had to be done at the Georgetown Hospital. Okay? Previous to that, last year and the other year and the other year, 3-4 years ago, they were being dispatched quietly, no fanfare in the media, where they even did hysterectomies. Hysterectomy is the surgical removal of the uterus, the diseased uterus. Uterus, of course, is the womb. That would have had to be done in Georgetown previously. So the Amerindian woman had her surgery and went home shortly afterwards, overcoming all the social implications of having to bring a poor Amerindian woman to Georgetown, where she might be a stranger, not fully, having the social network support. You look at it, Jeffrey going to Dr. Fawcett Jeffrey, one of the best probably in the Caribbean, going on a plane with 10 other doctors to Mabruma to do the surgical correction of clubfoot. Clubfoot is when the child born with a foot twist badly. In the past, that Amerindian child was doomed, especially if it's a female, okay? Because they can't go to school, they're ostracized in any society. Problem solved. We did 2 cases there at one sitting. In other words, while we were having one team visit. So those are some of the things that we're doing as an administration. That's why when I boast about the coastal facilities, Diamond Lane, Norasodi, Maikoni, those are the diagnostic centers, and Port Morant, which is the National Eye Hospital. I also like to add Lethem and Mabruma, because we've not forgotten the indigenous populations. Okay? And Guyana is set to engage its continental destiny. Previously, we were always concentrated on the Caribbean, but cricket and calypso are not strong enough to keep us holding on to the Caribbean linkage. That is strong and it will stay like that, culturally and so on. Cricket, you could never forget that. But Brazil, the powerhouse of the continent, they're coming through our south on the belly. There's a road that will be evolving. We need to start thinking. That's why I want to talk about Linden now. Not only is Diamond University, Maikoni, Port Morant now having modern hospitals, not only is Mabruma and Lethem down at the bottom, but on the way up from Brazil through Lethem, you come through to Linden. It's on the pathway to development or continental destiny. Therefore, within the past few years, the Ministry of Health has also constructed a modern hospital at Linden. Not that you didn't have an old one. This one is a modern one. Almost $3.5 billion if you the total cost of the structure and the equipment. And besides that, we staff in these facilities. So Linden is set to move in terms of health. And why? It's a vision. You've put it, you've developed that facility because Linden is now set to take off. It's going to be a critical junction on the road from Lethem, from Brazil, Lethem to the coast, the Atlantic coast of Guyana, right? And that's where big things are happening. Now, in these facilities, all of them, we have teams of doctors. For example, I told you we're not only developing structures and infrastructure, which we inherited 20 years ago in a dilapidated state, but we are staffing them with well-trained, qualified persons in adequate numbers. This is where I'd like to make another boast for the PPP Civic Administration, having achieved over the past 20 years, but more so in the past 5 to 8 years. We have increased the number of trained health personnel in this country umpteen-fold. Over the past 5 years or so, we've trained 500 new doctors, totally new. This was given a very big impetus when in February of 2006, I think it was, President Jagdeo took a small team of us. I was included in that team, including the Minister of Finance, Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh. He went in that team, and President Jagdeo and President Castro sat just like how we sat sitting around a small table here, and they were Ashni Singh and translators and so a small group. And he hammered out an extended cooperation and help between Cuba and Guyana. And whereas in the past we were getting only a few students going to Cuba, we had suddenly plane loads going to Cuba to serve. And what happened, Edward? We were taking some of these students out of the hinterland schools. And this wasn't a formative action. This was young people of Amerindian extraction or hinterland extraction who were properly qualified to compete with anybody, even their coastlanders. And we took them to Cuba, and now they were being trained. They're now being referred to as the Jagdeo scholars, right? And this would be one of the everlasting legacies of Jagdeo. He was visionary enough to say, let's build these hospitals, let's decentralize, but building hospitals alone and equipping them don't solve the problem. You got to create the brain power. So while we were creating this brain power with our 500 new doctors, not that Cuba was not allowing us or helping us to train before, but those were in small numbers. Remember the Cuban air disaster 35 years ago?
Yeah.
A lot people might have been forgetting this, but recently we marked that anniversary at the University of Guyana, where we opened or commissioned a monument complex to the memory of these people. On that plane, I think 53 people perished when a terrorist blew up. He's walking around freely somewhere in America. He blew up that plane, or he and his cohorts blew up that plane off of the Barbadian coast. And what happened? You'll see the relevance here. We lost, I think it was 11 Guyanese students, the best, the creme of the crop, going to Cuba to study not only medicine but other things. And I think only 5 or 6 of them were for medicine. Now, in recent years, when I hire a plane or when I organize to send people to Cuba to study medicine with the Jagdeo initiative, we send in 250, 300. You see the mathematics? So this vision now sees us having these new hospitals, and I'll tell you about others that we've built or improved, and now you're having the staff. And not only are we having the staff at the level of the general doctor, Edward, we started now to bring them up to the specialist level. Because part of that visit, or the outcome of the visit in February 2006 with President Jagdeo and the discussion with President Castro, was this. Jagdeo understood that Guyana would not have enough doctors to fill these new hospitals in, say, the next 5 to 10 years. Therefore, he hammered out an arrangement where while Cuba was helping us to train our bright young people coming out of our secondary schools, which had then started to improve over the past 20 years under the PPP Civic, while they were being trained to create the Guyana national pool of doctors, we needed some elbow room because these hospitals we were building would not have specialists. Therefore, Castro Jagdeo hammered out an agreement where the Cuban government would send more specialists, more doctors beyond the existing Cuban brigade. The Cuban brigade had existed in Guyana for the past 30, 40 years. And they expanded it so that these hospitals, Diamond, Leonora, Study, Marconi, Port Morant, National Ophthalmology Hospital, would be in the main staffed by Cuban specialists, nurses, doctors, technicians, administrators. So said, so done. So these facilities at Diamond, for example, Diamond is a gem. I'm punning on the word, but Diamond is a gem. People love what's going on at Diamond. Not that it's an ideal situation. There are problems. Sometimes the guard deciding who to go and all kind of petty thing, but in the main, it has been a boon for the East Bank Demerara. And a hospital like that is in the main staffed by Cuban doctors. But in the meantime, a few years have passed. Guyanese scholars are starting to come back, and those are starting to work side by side with the Cuban counterparts. So you see the vision. Within 5 to 10 years, hopefully, we will always have some dependence on Cuba for specialists and for other countries, but we're building our national cadres. And we've started now to put our graduate doctors, many of whom come from Cuba, into postgraduate programs, overseas and local. But that's a discussion for another time. This is to show you the disposition of these hospitals. Mabaruma at the top of the map. Let them at the bottom of the map. And it's in the population areas where traditionally you had poor and marginalized Amerindians. That is a regionalization of the services. And now you're doing this, it's not only a hospital, but the surgeries. Okay? And at every one of these hospitals now, I have at least two Cuban trained Guyanese doctors based, where in the past you might have had a medics or a visiting doctor. So that is a regionalization of the services, and I'm happy that you have me on Regional Roundup. We're pushing these things.
All right, that basically puts in a nutshell what was happening and so forth. Um, you spoke extensively about the infrastructure and the human resource. Maybe you could spend a few minutes on the supplies that are being
Okay.
provided.
Okay, but that's a good point. Supplies, because you have to take in medications, injections, drugs, drip sets, and so on. That the amount of money that we're investing in recent times in the health sector has grown significantly, from 0 point something percent, 0.1% when we inherited it in the early 90s, in 92, 93. It's now about 9 to 10% of the budget. Now, we have resources, we have more drugs, but sometimes you still hear that there are some little shortages. It's a matter of managing your resources. Admittedly, drugs are expiring sometimes. We need to look at that. But there should be no shortage of any essential drug in this country. We have cases, for example, I went to Maruka recently with the Honorable Minister of Local Government, Mr. Ganga Prasad, who headed a team of 5 or 6 ministers. 5 or 6 ministers, this is unprecedented in any country, going to a small community and spreading out. Then we're going over this weekend. I'm going to let him. The president and a few more ministers will be going there. We're going to be celebrating Malaria in the Americas Day. You know, so we spread out, and I discovered in Maruka that apparently there was a shortage of drugs. It turned out that the drugs had been packaged already in Georgetown 3 weeks before, but were awaiting transportation, and there was some managerial human error. So those are things the Ministry of Health has to admit to. It might not, I told you, it's not only the Ministry of Health, it has to be several other agencies and ministries working together. So we solved that problem quickly. So yes, we do have enough supplies, medications. By that we mean tablets, injections, nose drops, eye drops, whatever, ear drops, and other things, and the sets for giving your transfusions, like infusions, like saline and so on. We need to manage it more tightly. We need to communicate better. Okay, so I don't think that is a problem. You might go to this particular facility and find some basic drug missing. That should not be, because of the better transportation system we have. For example, the Ministry of Health now has special refrigerated trucks for moving around certain sensitive supplies and things like this. But another thing we're looking at, the management. Therefore, as part of the health sector reform process, the Ministry of Health is looking at how other jurisdictions, other countries have been able to overcome some of these problems. We're strengthening our managerial base. For example, we're looking at uniting certain regions as exist now into health regions. You might got two regions, you come together for economy of scales, you're putting people to manage them. That's a work in progress. So you're regionalizing authority and power. And similarly, we're trying to get trained administrators for our health sector. Previously, you'd have a doctor running the health sector in the regions. We're looking now to have trained managers. We're introducing new training programs. For example, there's the MPH, which the government has so graciously allowed us to introduce at the at the University of Guyana, the MPH, Masters in Public Health. So you're not only a doctor, but now you have certain managerial training, how to get things done, how to manage health sector, how to manage health workers, how to manage resources. And by doing this, we hopefully will get more and more managers who are not necessarily doctors, but who know about health and how to manage the health sector. So those are some of the things we're doing. We're creating certain authorities which are beyond the regions, just bringing regions together. Regional health authorities, for example, that's in the embryonic stage, and that's probably a discussion, a wider discussion for another of your regional roundup.
I know we're quickly, time is quickly slipping away from us, but maybe you could spend some time, let us look forward a little, some of your plans at the ministry level in terms of the various regions.
Okay, that's good. But let me slip in one more thing under the materials that you mentioned, the supplies. For certain regions, you have specific things you need, like malarious regions. We've sent off massive numbers of bed nets, specially treated bed nets. There's not a normal bed net that you buy in border market or from those guys by the museum. This is a specially treated bed net with an insecticide that will kill mosquitoes that carry malaria or dengue or so on. We have been able to supply and get a good supply of those for our malarious regions. Over the past 3 to 4 years, we have distributed 114,000 to malarious areas like Region 1, Region 7, 8, 9, in a selected manner where the malaria is concentrated. And we have sent off to let them recently 1,000 in the past 2 3 weeks, and 3 weeks I think, and in the next few days we send in more. And the vector control services will be looking at where to put these, which communities to get these based on their mapping of where malaria is hitting us. And we've been able, so another thing on supplies, we in a scientific manner where you need to send the supplies and what supplies. The bed nets are expensive. One bed net might cost me to buy and deploy to the right person about 50 US. And we've already deployed so far 114,000, and this continues. But these things do not get into the media, so I'm happy that we're here on Region Roundup to tell you about it. Plus, in certain areas you might have difficulties with purity of water. We're sending out thousands and thousands of water treatment tablets. So we're not only thinking about the coast, we're thinking about those areas where we need what? Those specialized supplies. Now the future, we need to develop a modern workforce, health workforce. We're in the process of doing that. So we're going to be seeing that all of these doctors that are coming back, shortly about 200 more are supposed to come back from Cuba, that they are inducted into the Guyanese system and given the necessary training, for example, by passing through the Georgian Hospital and other main hospitals, by providing their upward mobility. Not only must they stay at the level of a regular doctor, or what you might call a more official graduate doctor, but you have to give them to become specialists as a surgeon, gynecologist and obstetrician, and we've started to introduce those programs right here in Guyana. And it's not a wishy-washy third world invention. These are programs that are stewarded, are mentored, are supervised by people from centers of excellence from other countries, other universities overseas. And we keep bringing people in here for training. We've already started training for cardiology, for to doing diagnostics. You can put the ultrasound machine and know what's happening in the heart. And that's ongoing with the assistance, for example, of a team from Calgary University. Within the next few days, they will be coming back to train the second batch, and so on, and we get in equipment. So plans creating a modern workforce. Not simply a nurse who can come and take your temperature and you do your pressure and so on, but a nurse who now is specialized. So not only are we specializing the doctors, but you have nurses who are specializing in anesthesia. Previously, they would specialize only as midwives, but now we're going into anesthesia, pediatrics, mental health, and so on. So the workforce is being modernized, while at the same time we're making them more numerous. Right now, in my nursing schools, and there are 3 nursing schools in Guyana, one in Georgetown, one in Linden, and one in New Amsterdam. That's the government schools I'm speaking about. And I want to warn you, we need to avoid these bogus nursing schools. You need to come to the nursing schools run by the government or run by reputable private institutions. Okay? If you don't have qualifications to get in the government nursing school, how on earth could you go to a bogus school, get in with those non-qualifications and expect us to accept you? So beware. That's just an aside, Edward. So we have nursing schools which have just about 700 or 800 young ladies predominantly, but a few young men training to be nurses. So that is a big impetus. And I want to remind you, we pay each one of them about $16,000 per month as stipend and food and ration allowance. So if you look at that, it might look a little bit, Edward, $16,000, but that's for 700 to 800 people over a year, over years, for 12 months a year. So that's a big burden on the Guyanese budget, and that shows where we're headed. We are developing the workforce among the doctors, among the nurses, and then there are about 15 or 20 other health programs that are being sponsored or being done, operated by the Ministry of Health. You have the medic, you have the X-ray technician, you have the medical laboratory technician, and so on and so forth. Where young people coming out of the schools with some requirements can enter these programs, and they too are given a small stipend. And then we have one of my flagship programs that I just love and promote, the medics training program. We have right now in house about 25 or 28 medics in training. Those people are like barefoot doctors, forget the term, but they're just below the level of the doctor. And they too, the medics sometimes in the rural areas and the hinterland areas is called doc. We are training over the past few years, we've trained just over 100 medics. So it's not only the nurses and the doctors we're training, but the medics who will now what? Seep into the regional system. Because as you know, medics is a special category of healthcare worker, not to work in the main areas, but to work in the periphery. See people, teach them how to live correctly with health, do certain procedures, administer certain treatment, and quickly identify potential problems and refer them upward. So those are the things we the modern workforce. Second, to get equity, we need to have, for example, a good referral system. You might identify a problem in a particular area, but I don't have the Gobin team or the Jeffrey team at Mabroom at that time. Therefore, the doctor at that area needs to be equipped to identify the problem, like a potential high-risk pregnancy. You don't wait until the high-risk pregnancy becomes an emergency. A mechanism or a powerful referral system is done so that doctor can quickly identify and transfer to Georgetown. And we're spending millions, sometimes as much as 25 to 30 million dollars a year to bring people out of the hinterland. That is predominantly indigenous people to enjoy the services in Georgetown, which we cannot have permanently in the hinterland. But you have to have the basically trained doctor to identify early that this woman is going to have a high-risk pregnancy. Get her out quickly. So that's some of the things we're going to strengthen for the future. And at the same time, we're going to be emphasizing now the fight against non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases is an epidemic across the world. That is things like the cancers, pressure and the cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, things like that, and of course chronic pulmonary diseases. The Ministry of Health is putting that on the front burner. For example, these diseases, these categories are kind of reinforced, their threat is reinforced by cigarette smoking or tobacco smoking, abuse of alcohol, sedentary lifestyle, being active, sitting in front of the television all day, munching some junk food, and the use of wrong food, fatty foods, sugary foods, and salt. So the Ministry of Health now, and I hope you invite me to the next program of Regional Roundup, will be pushing this at the regional level. How are we going to fight against the diseases and equipping our regional facilities with the lab facilities and so on to identify things like this?
Minister, I want to thank you very much. I know time just slipped away from us quite quickly, but I want to thank you very much. I think you have shed some light on the services the government, more particularly the Ministry of Health, is offering at the regional level. And I want to thank you very much for joining us. Hope we can meet sometime again to continue this.
Thank you.